From Wells Fargo, Heather Magaha. First, some supporters to thank, and thank you for listening. Here it is, the fully integrated cloud CX platform that you need to act smarter, respond faster, and be first in CX. Now you can turn innovation into value, scale up when you need, and add new capabilities whenever the situation demands it. One experience, a single unified solution for employees and customers. One cloud, a single cloud offering based on AWS public cloud technology. One path for migration to the CX1 platform. The fully integrated cloud customer experience platform from NICE, allowing you to be first in CX. Visit nice.com for more. Leaders responsible for operations, information technology, customer experience, contact centers, customer care, service and support are invited to register for a free CCW digital membership. Membership includes networking with 100,000 plus qualified industry professionals, quarterly executive research reports, product matchmaking, and more. Go to ccwdigital.com to join the community. That's ccwdigital.com. Hope is not a strategy. So says Wells Fargo's SVP National Client Service, Heather Magaha, who joins us from CCW and further shares that you've got to have a plan, but at least try something. You can't sit in status quo or you get nowhere, by definition. You've got to be brave. When she came into her role, she did hear the familiar refrain, "We've always done it this way," but she was blessed with the fact that a good portion of the team didn't like it. Change, though, as Heather shares, is still difficult even if you actually don't like the way things currently are. But she did have a bit of momentum on the way in to the concept of change management. Welcome to CCW Digital on B2B IQ. I'm your host, Seth Adler. Download episodes on ccwdigital.com or through our app in iTunes, within the iTunes podcast app in Google Play or wherever you currently get your podcasts. Heather Magaha.
Heather Magaha.
That's not how you pronounce that.
It is how you pronounce it. I said Magaha when I married him.
Yeah.
But it's Magaha. Wacky Magaha.
Wacky Magaha.
If
Is
you're
him or is
rhyming
you? Or both?
Yeah. I think he earned Wacky before I did, but he's taught me a bit.
Okay. And Magaha.
Yeah, it's Gaelic, so it should be Magaha. But, no American is going to do the fur ball hacking H
Not
like
happening.
that.
Nope.
Yeah.
Heather
Magaha.
I can't even because there's no...
Don't look at it.
I know, there's
Don't
no
look at
K or anything.
I know, there's no CKY at the end.
At all. But that doesn't matter. What does matter is that you gave a session where you basically said, really all you have to do is try. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would say hope is not a strategy.
Okay.
So you got to have a plan, but yeah, you got to try something.
Mm-hmm.
You can't sit in status quo or you get nowhere.
Right.
So yeah, we had to get brave and we had to try.
Now, how easy was it for you to be brave in that you came into a new position and had to change it?
Mm-hmm.
Or did I mishear you and you chose to change it?
I did choose to change
Okay.
it. I think the hurdle and the obstacle was coming into a new position, having everybody around me well ingrained with what the old used to be.
We do it this way.
Right.
We've always done it this
right.
way.
Now, what I had working in my favor is that a good portion of them didn't like it. They were used to it. So, by the way, that doesn't mean, though, that change is necessarily easy, because change is still hard, even if you don't like how it's been done.
Yeah.
But I did have that momentum heading into the idea to make the change.
Okay. So let's just kind of give the overview. It was a 40-minute session. We don't have that kind of time.
Right,
Heather.
right.
But essentially, from day one, what did you do and how long did it take?
Yeah, so it was about a year journey, year and a half if you include the pilot, and we had what we called service reviews in the beginning, and we were asking our customer-facing folks to look at a 6-month snapshot of data and make recommendations to customers only based on the data. Mm-hmm. And so that's really where we were going wrong. Not only were we having a very narrow view of how to add value, but we were asking them to deliver that information in a really old fashion that didn't feel comfortable. It wasn't resonating with people.
Well, wait a second. I'm supposed to be data-driven, and I'm supposed to do everything based on what the data says. I thought that's the new way to look at it.
Yeah, we are never going to be able to remove the value that humans bring to the conversation. And so what was really rich in the transformation that we made to service consultations is that they still start with the data, but then we asked them to use all of the other information that they have coming into them at their disposal, whether that's internal partners or just the little valuable nuggets that the customer was dropping.
Such
that
as?
you're never going to capture it in data. The example that I used that I think resonates is, we could have a customer-facing agent that hears from their customer, the treasurer, we got a new boss today, and he doesn't know how to send out wires or, whatever the banking function is of the day. That may not be the express need of why they've called, and you may end up answering the expressed question they've asked. But that nugget of, there's somebody at the company who I could add value to.
Right.
Let me call them. Let me walk them through how to do XYZ on the system because it's going to make them more successful and the person that I'm talking to.
Yeah. And the results were kind of astonishing, right?
Yeah.
So 18% to whatever. What was it?
Yeah, it was. We went from 15% tangible results to 85%. Just a massive change in the value that we were adding to the interaction. And, it's funny, before when we were hovering around that 15%, that's not a great ROI.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes we were seeing the sales force kind of uninvite us to the customer conversations.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, they couldn't be sure that we were going to deliver something that deserved the shelf space with the client.
Right.
And then as we saw that needle move to the 85%, all of a sudden, they're blowing up my T&E budget now. They're wanting our customer service folks at the table for lots of those conversations.
So some of this is that we added the human element, if you will, to the data. That can't be it. You can't go from 15 to 85 or whatever you just said. Or is that just it?
No, it's not just it. What was baked into that year and a half journey was developing the tools and the methodology and then ultimately the training for the folks. They had the intel, they have the smarts, but they hadn't previously been empowered. So you've got to find a way to open up their mind and then give them the resources so they have a starting point and then just watch it take off.
Data, process, human element, bingo.
You got it.
All right. So how were you so smart? Why did they say, Heather, go? And they didn't even say, Heather, go do this. They said, Heather, congratulations, you have a new job. And you're like,
That's
oh,
right.
God, I'm going to have to change everything.
That's right. Yeah, it's funny. You're right, because there wasn't a mandate to change.
Yeah.
And I think what really started bringing it to light was just having frank conversations with my partners. They knew that I was new to the role. They knew that they could give me the feedback. I didn't have the baggage. And so those frank conversations kind of led to what was not great about it and how it could potentially be great.
And with the planes flying over above, and I think also geese, we have to mention that we're outside here at
We are. It's a lovely, lovely setting.
As those things happen, let's kind of dive in, right? Because you get into the role and you just start talking to people, right? So we need to figure out where this personality was developed, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So you and I guessed based on your O's and other things and your y'alls that you're kind of... You have some Maryland roots, you have some Virginia roots, you have some North Carolina roots, but most of all, it's Southern Florida.
That's right. That's right. And if we want to be best friends after this, let's make sure that we not disparage my Florida Gators.
Why would I do that?
Well, I would hope not. You seem to be a man of character.
Yeah, sure. I don't. It's also, I went to a Division III school, so it's very easy for me not to offend anybody.
Then we can be friends.
Because I essentially have no idea what's going on as far as that's concerned. But go Gators, sure.
Go Gators.
Yeah, all right. Now, when you were growing up,
yes,
you told me Fort Myers.
Fort Myers.
Yeah. So you're running around. How many siblings did you have?
None. Just me.
Oh, so this is an answer. Okay. Because my girlfriend, who is aforementioned now, also an only child.
Yeah.
That comes with its own stuff.
It does.
You're a very important person.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad you think so.
I'm saying that's what your parents think.
Oh, absolutely. It taught me that concept very early.
Yeah. Very important.
Yep. And a bit of a daddy's girl. Mm-hmm.
Sure. When did other people start coming into this? You know what I mean? Like when you started to get around friends, when did your, kind of personality kind of come out? What did they start sharing? Oh, when Heather comes, Heather's this way. When did you start realizing what other people thought? Is that a fair question?
Yeah, who knows how they would answer. I can see kind of the early beginnings of my career probably from late middle school through high school into college, I didn't know how to join something without leading it. So, it was probably a bit much at times, but yeah, some of that natural leadership.
So I would never, I have the Groucho Marx theory of I would never be part of a group that would have me as a member. But your point is I don't know how to be a part of a group without leading it.
Yeah, I struggle with that a little bit.
What, is that from your parents, do you think, or?
No.
Being important is one thing. Leading is that's a different tool.
It is a different thing. I would say my parents gave me some really unique qualities. Number one, they were both bankers.
Okay.
And so I was hearing the talk, watching the walk from a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
And my father has tremendous business acumen mixed with unparalleled political savvy inside of an organization.
I see.
And so I've been able to model some of what I saw there. And then my mother is the most resourceful person you will ever meet. She was raised on a farm. I've seen her teach herself how to do hardwood floors, re-wallpaper, replumb a toilet,
really?
Cook crazy. Yeah, it's just, so that's a really unique combination to have grown up with.
If you need it done, she
Call
can
her.
do it.
Call Carol.
I was going to say Mrs. McGeggy, but she's not.
No,
right?
No. We call her Cece, Crazy Carol. Call Carol because she is going to get it done.
I gotcha.
And I guarantee she has a roll of duct tape in her car right now.
Really?
It solves most of the problems.
It really does solve a lot of stuff. If you're not, if you don't know about duct tape, look into it.
Amen.
All right. So when did you decide to go to Florida, and did you go with a major or not?
Oh, so Seth, here's where our story comes to a divide.
Oh, boy.
I did not go to Florida.
Wait, I don't understand.
Yeah,
we just talked about the Florida.
Well, I bleed orange and blue.
Okay.
I was raised going to all the season games for Florida.
Fine.
But the North Carolina mountains were calling me.
I see.
And so I decided to go off on a wild hair, and because the school paid every dime of my education.
Sure, that'll help.
So, yes, I went to High Point University, a small private liberal arts college in High Point, North Carolina, and then did my master's work at Wake Forest.
Wake Forest. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Tim Duncan, who you remember, I'm sure, right? Yeah. He was good. Let's be honest.
A little bit good.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Not even a little bit. So undergrad, you got. I understand you went, but what were you studying undergrad? Did we figure it out yet?
So undergrad, I was studying business with double concentration in finance and management of information systems.
Okay, so we were going where we were going. We knew this.
We were on the path.
Dad and Mom, good coaching, right? Let's get in. Let's do this. Small liberal arts college, they're paying for everything. I feel like it's probably not too hard for you.
Right. It was working out pretty well.
And there we go. So then the Wake Forest thing happens.
Yeah.
Was that more difficult? Was that like all of a sudden we're being tested a little bit?
Yeah, that was a different rigor. I remember coming home after my first econ class, which I had sailed through in undergrad, and I remember coming home crying to my now husband and saying, I just don't belong there, and sitting in that group of 69 other really talented people, and it was the first time that I was around a group that, they pushed me.
And there you go.
It was a great experience.
You're used to being the leader. You're used to being important. You have these new feelings, which the rest of us, by the way, have had the whole way through. You got to wait until graduate school to get into this. Yeah. So what did he say? How did he help? What did you think to kind of get back on the horse?
Well, it's not a statement that has a lot of finesse to it, but I think his words were something to the effect of, Heather, people dumber than you have figured this out. And, when I sat back, he's not wrong. And I sat back and, so I just kind of doubled down and studied harder. And it was also a really good lesson in learning and using and leveraging the resources around me, because then I figured out who was really, really smart in the class and then picked them to be on my team.
Right. Then you figured out the kind of the political stuff that your dad had. You're like, I can use that in graduate at school. Hey, Dave. Yeah.
That's right.
Let me buy you a beer, Dave.
That's right. I bought the accountant on our team a lot of beer.
There you go. This is what it was. And what were we drinking at Wake Forest? I
wonder. Gosh. Probably back then, it probably was just Coors Light.
Coors Light.
Yeah.
Rolling Rock, was that in there
Nah,
at all?
I can't do
No, because that's Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Wake Forest, where's Wake Forest?
Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Oh, it is North
So
Carolina.
now, we'd be drinking Foothills or one of the other local brews.
Yeah, a nice microbrew.
Yeah.
Because you're classy.
That's right.
There we go. All right, so you get through now. Now you figure it out.
I got it.
And so then the first organization that says, Heather, we want you. Come on. Come on over. Who was that?
So I've technically been with the same company for my 20-plus year career, and it was the original, what we call the Blue Wachovia. So it was the original Wachovia Bank prior to their merger with First Union. So I've been with the company.
When they became the Green Wachovia, right?
Yeah, we kind of called them the teal or the plaid,
I
right?
see.
We did the blue-green thing when Wachovia and First Union came together, but kept the Wachovia name.
Yeah.
And then since 2009, Wells Fargo.
Okay, so Blue Wachovia.
Yeah.
What was your remit? Your job?
So this is also a funny story. I failed at getting hired at Wachovia the first time or two. Just conveniently didn't get a call back, and I had a lovely professor who made a very important phone call that opened a door.
Interesting.
And so I joined their investment operations management training program. It was back in the day when many of the banks had many management training programs.
Sure.
And sadly, I did not understand what the word operations meant. Truly, I did not understand. I heard the word investment, and I thought, outstanding. They're going to teach me how to trade on Wall Street.
I can't wait for this. This is going to be great.
So I got in the program, but I'm so glad that it worked out the way that it did.
When did you figure out what operations meant?
As soon as I walked in day one and saw rows and rows and rows of cubes, I was like, ding, ding, ding. I'm starting to get this now. But it was a fabulous learning experience. What I realized is, the back office, front office, that wasn't so important to me, but I'm a learner, and I loved kind of the processing and the engineering side of being in operations. So I had a great couple-year run in the group. I priced illiquid securities. I managed our trust vault, so all of the assets, furs and diamonds and all that get held in trust. So
look at that.
That was all very interesting.
What, Heather, was it that they did not see those first couple times when you didn't get the job? In other words, we had the professor call, thanks so much. We can see now why, of course, this all makes sense. But what was still missing, I guess, because, you got hit in the face, if you will, at Wake Forest, and it sounds like we still weren't kind of fully developed yet.
Yeah, and in actuality, that happened at High Point. So so I was already working at the bank when I went to Wake. So, I don't know if it was the smaller school and the lack of name recognition. Now they have fabulous name recognition. But back then, not so much. I don't know. If you were to ask them, which I did, they all claim it was just an administrative error that I was on the list. So, that's what I said too. Sure.
Well, I mean, that's what they're going to tell you now. Of course it was an error. Everybody could see that it was an error. All right, so Blue Wachovia, and then what? Plaid happens. How did Plaid happen?
And
for you,
for me. Yeah. So I was called in the room at 9:00 in the morning, and this was after we knew that we were merging with First Union, and I was told, thank you, but no thank you, and you won't have a job.
Look at you
in the future.
I was not expecting that to be what happened in the meeting.
Yeah, it did. And an hour later, we got to tell 653 of our closest friends. So our entire operation already existed in the First Union world and markets that were going to survive. And so I was a free agent at that point and leveraged my network in the MBA program at the time at Wake. And I had a colleague that said, hey, you should try the sales thing, Heather. I think you'd be really good at it. And I said, well, I've never sold anything a day in my life. She's like, yeah, it's all right. So she made a call. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting down in an interview and the lead banker says, you're like a lottery pick at this point. And I said, I know. So let's try to win $1 million. And so I convinced him to hire me. And
wait a second. Lottery pick like lottery like we all play it, or lottery pick like Tim Duncan lottery pick?
No, lottery pick in as you could be worth a fortune or you could turn out to be a total dud.
Nothing. Right.
It's like a scratch ticket. It could go
And I love what I love about this is you're like, yeah, okay, fine.
Well, I was. There was no arguing that I didn't have sales experience.
Got it. Right.
But, it worked out really well. Mm-hmm. And I did that for a couple of years. And, now being in customer service, I so much better appreciate what our relationship managers and our salespeople go through. It makes me much more empathetic, and it buys me credibility.
Well, that's definite, right? Because you were on the sales side. Mm-hmm. So they say, oh, no, you did this. Okay, fine, you get it. Mm-hmm. The other part of you actually knowing how hard that is, mm-hmm. you have to kind of do it to know how hard it is, right?
Yes.
You cannot fake that.
No, there is no way to replicate the feeling of 0 to 0 when you've made your sales goal and now it's time to start over. Yeah. There's just no way to replicate that feeling.
That's the Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately?
That's exactly it.
Yeah. So, okay, great. We got into sales. Everything is doing just fine. Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, where in this whole conversation is the economic apocalypse? Because it's coming up here, I would imagine, right?
It is. So before the apocalypse happened, I found myself unenamored with sales, and I had done my tour of duty, and the call back to operations or to serve was pulling me in. And so I made my transition to customer service at that point.
Before. All
right. And it was funny. I kind of had the best of both worlds. I was in a service group that rolled up within operations within our company. So I kind of had both flavors.
Totally.
And then the financial crisis hit.
Okay. So you're sitting there at Wachovia, which is not a brand name anymore.
Correct.
And just give us a sense of, you're in customer service, okay, fine. I would imagine director-ish level at least, right? Not even.
No.
Lower level than that.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I was managing managers. At the company then, I was barely mid-level management.
Okay. So not high level.
Correct.
And so how did you find out about this? Because I found out about it by everybody going crazy, right? Like in the news.
That's how we found out about it too.
That's how you found out about it too.
I was sitting on the beach on vacation.
Yep.
And my phone started blowing up, and they said, you've just been bought by Citi. And then it was, 24, 48 hours. No, just kidding. You've been bought by Wells Fargo.
Right.
And then there was all the rumors of the doors closing. And, it was a scary time.
So I remember before that moment of Citi, no Wells Fargo, I remember Wachovia was one of the institutions that had to get bought.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It was like Merrill Lynch had to get bought.
Yes.
Wachovia had to get bought.
Yes.
So you went on vacation, it sounds like.
We at that point, though, we had at our levels, there was no understanding. And we knew we were in trouble.
Got it.
But the average Joe in the company did not have a good concept that we were like the other ones that were falling in the days before us.
Interesting. So I was watching the appropriate amount of CNBC to know.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yes.
And I've switched to Bloomberg, and the CNBC people can call me and try to get me back, but whatever. All right, so that happens, and you get back from vacation. What kind of transition was it for you?
Everybody was definitely in a state of panic.
Yeah.
I think people were cautiously optimistic about merging with Wells Fargo,
right.
Especially when you looked at who was left in the field.
Sure.
From a culture perspective, and the way, Wachovia always had a stellar reputation for putting the customer first. I mean, that bank was built on that concept.
Yep.
So that's what everybody was so intent on protecting as we look towards what's next in the future.
Because it was, at that time, it was Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citi. And out of those four, Wells Fargo was a good pick.
That's
right. Is that a fair way to say it from a layperson's point of view?
I would agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when did the Wells Fargo people kind of realize who you were?
Yeah, so it's funny. People talk about you make your own opportunities. And at the time, I didn't know that I was making my opportunity, but I can kind of see it in hindsight. So I called my boss, a couple of days after returning, and I said, hey, I don't know what's going to happen with this whole Wells Fargo thing, but if you need anybody to go to San Francisco to, talk about what we do or help with merger activities, I would love to be a part of that work.
Put me in, coach.
And it made it really easy for him, because then when the first call came to say, we're going to get that first combined group of people together, he didn't have to decide who to pick. It was an easy way out for him to tell the rest of the team that didn't get picked, Heather offered first, so she's going.
She called me.
That's it. And that meeting really was pivotal. We had a mixed audience of Wells Fargo and Wachovia people, and who became my boss said it was just really clear that I knew my business and could speak to what was going on. And so then I became a valuable resource to know the land we were coming from to map the land we were going to.
Okay, great. And you go ahead and make that transition.
I do.
And then when did we get to the point where they picked you out for this new place, which we already discussed?
Yeah. So I think I was able to quickly gain credibility with the legacy Wells Fargo team. Yeah. They understood that I had a shared vision, even if I had come from a different company. So that was really when my scope of responsibility started really taking off. Yeah. It's funny, people always talk about M&A activity as being painful. And I'm like, well, no, actually it gave me some of the best opportunities of my career. So then I got to start growing the number of sites and the number of people and setting more and more strategy.
As far as heading a contact center, what advice would you give your colleagues?
Gosh, I would say don't lose sight of the voice of the customer. And I know that sounds a little cliche, but here's what I really mean by that. If you really get into the nuggets of that, it's easy to throw around that we put the customer first. It's easy to throw around that we want to listen to the voice of the customer. But really put the pen to paper and what is it that you're doing to make sure that you're staying in touch with what's really happening. I find a tremendous amount of value still. Every time I make a site visit to any of my locations, I still sit and shadow my CSO for at least 2 hours a day.
That's great.
Because I have to know, what their pain points are. I have to see the tools and the infrastructure I've provided them to serve. And I also want to hear what the customer's saying directly.
Aside from sitting right next to them, what's a secret of managing people?
Oh, gosh. Being an excellent communicator. I think there are so many really, really bright people out there that can't get out of their mouth what's in their head.
Huh.
And it's unfortunate and it's sad because they have brilliant things going on.
Yeah.
But if you can't communicate in a way that really resonates with people and helps them understand the vision, the only person benefiting from that brilliant idea is you.
Huh. Which is not enough people.
That's not enough people.
You need more people on the team.
You need a few more people getting some things done. Absolutely.
Okay, so I could talk to you all day, and I really would love to do that, but I feel like we've got other things to do. And so I'll tell you what the 3 final questions are.
Okay.
And then I'll ask you them.
Okay.
What has most surprised you at work? What has most surprised you in life? And on the soundtrack of your life, 1 track, 1 song that's got to be on there. First things first.
Wow.
We just went through your career quickly, let's be honest. What's most surprised you at work?
The level of impact that sponsors and advocates have played in my journey.
Unpack that. What do you mean?
There is a vast difference between mentorship and sponsorship. A mentor is somebody who you're going to tell the good, the bad, the ugly. They're going to guide you. They're going to give you the really direct feedback. The sponsors are the people that you hope they know the good, and the good about you, and that's what you're going to tell them. And those are the people willing to stake their reputation to speak on your behalf when you're not in the room.
Huh.
And I can look back at my career, again, in hindsight. I didn't know it was happening when it was happening.
Sure.
But there are very key people and pivotal moments where people were advocating for me that opened doors that led to the next best thing.
For the folks that are younger that are listening to this, how can they attract a sponsor?
You have to be visible. So it's not like getting a mentor. You can't go to somebody and say, will you be my sponsor? It doesn't work like that, like it does with mentorship. So you have to, first of all, there is no substitute for doing good work and working hard. But the key is then you have to get it in front of the right people. And once you notice that someone is starting to talk well about you, feed them more. Keep putting the really good stuff in front of them because you've got the momentum. They've noticed you. Now give them more to talk about when you're not in the room.
Interesting. That's tough to do for somebody that doesn't have a big ego, I guess. Does that make sense?
I would say ego.
In other words, you did this, and let me clarify what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
You did this unknowingly, and you just said unwittingly, I can't believe the import that had in my career.
Right.
But if you're telling somebody to knowingly do this,
Yes.
if I don't have a big ego, that sounds uncomfortable.
Oh, it's hugely uncomfortable. And when I talk to younger folks about that, that's absolutely what I get. And it's almost like I have to convince them that it's not wrong. You need to be doing this.
Yeah.
The old adage of I'm going to keep my head down, do really good work, and somebody's going to notice, you're shortchanging yourself. And so it's not about being manipulative. It's not about office politics. It's about being observant.
Yeah.
It's about observing what your brand is, how people are talking about your brand, who's talking about you, and then just being thoughtful about what you put in front of that person.
You're so smart. It's like a little bit unsettling.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, of course. What? No, like unsettling is it's like too smart. Like the one extra. What's most surprised you in life?
Gosh, I would say the unadulterated joy that my children have brought me.
Uh-huh.
I would never have understood how high that high can be. Likewise, I would also not necessarily have understood then you can, be equally at a low point. But the level of emotions that my children bring out in me has been extremely surprising.
How many of these people are there?
I have two little people, two fabulous boys, 4 and 11, otherwise known as Sweet and Mild and Sweet and Wild.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Sweet and Mild is older.
Of course, yes. He is the carbon copy of me.
Yeah, that's how that goes.
Uh-huh,
and then Sweet and Wild is...
Sweet and Wild is my husband. Yeah, I mean, he is a carbon copy of my husband, and he will cause me to be gray at an early age.
Do you know what must be amazing to watch?
What's that?
The 4 of you anywhere.
It is a bit of a sideshow,
right,
I have to admit.
Exactly. All right, soundtrack time. On the soundtrack of your life, one track, one song that's got to be on there.
Yeah, that's easy. I Have Found Me a Home by Jimmy Buffett.
Oh, my goodness. So you did Jimmy Buffett and you didn't do Margaritaville.
Yeah, that's fun, and we're going to sing it, but that's not the soundtrack of my life.
Are you a self-proclaimed parrot head?
Oh, I am a diehard Gator fan and a very loyal parrot head.
Good, which brings us back to Florida.
That's it.
And scene. It's easy to throw around that we put the customer first. It's easy to throw around that we want to listen to the voice of the customer. But what is it that you're doing to stay in touch with what's really happening? Very much appreciate Heather and her time. Very much appreciate you and yours. Stay tuned.